Why do some people quietly accumulate substantial wealth, while others with similar incomes struggle financially despite working just as hard? While most financial advice promises quick wealth-building strategies, the reality is that genuine wealth accumulation happens slowly and invisibly through mathematical principles that most people either don't understand or don't have the patience to implement. Here's what conventional money advice won't tell you. Compound interest can build significant wealth, but it requires decades of consistent investing in favorable market conditions that aren't guaranteed. The Invisible Millionaire isn't about financial secrecy. It's about understanding why modest, sustained investing often outperforms dramatic financial moves. Over the next few minutes, I'll reveal 7 principles about leveraging compound growth with honest assessment of both the potential and the significant limitations. The 4th principle shows why starting early matters more than starting with large amounts, though both timelines and results vary dramatically based on individual circumstances. If you want realistic compound interest education without unrealistic promises, subscribe and comment "Patient Growth" below. But that's just the beginning. What I'm about to reveal shows why the farmer's invisible orchard explains both the power and the patience required for compound wealth building. Principle 1. Small, consistent contributions compound dramatically over time. Most people think building wealth requires dramatic income increases or finding some secret investment strategy, so they keep waiting for the right time to start investing seriously. Meanwhile, years pass by, and they're still waiting for that big promotion, inheritance, or business breakthrough that will finally give them enough money to matter. This waiting game keeps them from taking advantage of the most powerful wealth-building tool available to ordinary people. You probably know this frustration. Looking at your modest income and thinking that saving $100 or $200 a month won't make any real difference. It feels pointless when you hear about people with millions in the stock market, and your small contributions seem insignificant by comparison. Let me tell you about 2 farmers who approached their land completely differently. The impatient gardener wanted immediate results from every seed planted. He'd tried different crops each season, always looking for something that would produce a big harvest quickly. When his plantings didn't show dramatic results within a year, he'd give up and try something else. The orchard planner understood that fruit trees require years before producing meaningful harvests. He planted apple and walnut trees, knowing he wouldn't see substantial returns for a decade or more. His approach looked less productive initially, just tiny saplings while the gardener had visible crops. But those trees eventually produced harvests that dwarfed anything the impatient gardener achieved. Mathematical reality check. $200 invested monthly at 7% annual returns becomes approximately $525,000 over 30 years. However, this assumes consistent ability to save that amount and favorable market conditions that don't always occur. Markets include significant downturns that can reverse years of progress. Here's something you can start this month. If you're not already investing, begin with whatever amount feels sustainable, even $25 monthly. If you are investing, consider increasing contributions by just 1% of your income. The goal isn't dramatic change, but establishing the habit. The mindset shift you need is understanding that time, not amount, creates the compound effect. Starting with small amounts in your 20s often beats starting with large amounts in your 40s. However, this approach requires decades of discipline and favorable market conditions. Don't expect quick results or guaranteed outcomes. Compound growth is powerful, but slow and uncertain, requiring realistic expectations about both timeline and risk. Principle 2. Reinvesting returns accelerates growth exponentially. One of the biggest wealth-building mistakes people make is treating investment returns like bonus money to spend rather than fuel for future growth. When your portfolio gains $2,000 in a good year, it feels like found money that you've earned the right to enjoy. But spending those gains instead of reinvesting them dramatically slows your wealth accumulation because you're removing the money just when it could start working harder for you. This spending pattern feels natural because investment gains don't feel like real money the same way your paycheck does. It's easy to rationalize using market gains for vacations or purchases since you didn't work directly for that money. But this mindset prevents compound growth from reaching its full potential. Let me tell you about two business owners who handled their profits completely differently. The grain consumer used all business profits for immediate consumption and lifestyle upgrades. Every good season meant better food, nicer clothes, and more comfortable living. His approach felt rewarding because hard work led to immediate improvements in his quality of life. The seed multiplier reinvests a portion of every harvest to expand future production capacity. He'd use some profits for reasonable living expenses, but always set aside the best grain for next season's planting. This meant less immediate gratification, but his production capacity grew exponentially over time, while the consumers remained static. The solution is developing automatic reinvestment habits through dividend reinvestment plans and systematic rebalancing. Instead of receiving cash distributions, your gains get automatically reinvested to purchase more shares or units, creating an accelerating cycle of growth. Here's what you can implement. When setting up investment accounts, choose automatic dividend reinvestment options. For retirement accounts, resist the temptation to take distributions early or loans against the balance. Let the money compound undisturbed as long as possible. The mindset shift you need is viewing investment gains as seeds rather than a harvest. Those returns represent your portfolio's productive capacity, not spending money. However, this approach requires significant discipline and assumes favorable market conditions that don't always occur. Markets regularly experience downturns that can eliminate years of gains, and there's no guarantee that reinvestment will lead to continued growth. Be realistic about both the potential and the risks involved in long-term investing. Principle 3. Consistency matters more than amount. People often delay investing because they think they need substantial amounts to make it worthwhile, or they believe they've started too late to make any meaningful difference. You hear about needing $10,000 minimum investments, or see calculators showing you need to save $500 monthly to retire comfortably, and it feels overwhelming. Meanwhile, precious years pass by, while you're waiting to reach some arbitrary threshold that feels more achievable. This all-or-nothing thinking keeps people on the sidelines during their most valuable years for compound growth. You might think, what's the point of investing $50 a month when I need hundreds of thousands for retirement? So you wait for a better job, fewer expenses, or some future moment when investing will feel more significant. Let me tell you about two students pursuing education completely differently. The intense cramming student believed that meaningful learning required dramatic, concentrated efforts. He'd wait until he had large blocks of time to make real progress, then try to absorb massive amounts of information during intensive sessions that felt productive, but proved difficult to retain. The daily reader understood that knowledge accumulates through small, consistent exposure over time. He spent just 20 minutes each day reading and studying, even when it felt insignificant compared to the cramming student's dramatic efforts. His progress seemed minimal day to day, but the compound effect of daily learning created deep, lasting knowledge. Mathematical reality. $50 invested monthly starting at age 25 often outperforms $200 monthly starting at age 40, assuming 7% returns. The early starter ends up with more money despite contributing less total dollars, purely because of the extra 15 years of compound growth. However, this comparison assumes consistent market performance that doesn't always occur, and not everyone has the luxury of starting investing in their 20s due to student loans, lower early career income, or family obligations. Here's what you can do regardless of your age or amount. If you're not investing anything, start with whatever feels sustainable this month. If you're already investing, focus on consistency rather than trying to time perfect entry points or waiting for larger contributions. The mindset shift you need is understanding that time in the market typically beats timing the market or waiting for perfect amounts. However, don't feel inadequate if circumstances prevented early investing. Starting later is still better than never starting. And individual financial situations vary dramatically based on factors beyond personal control. Principle 4. Broad market exposure through index investing. Most people think successful investing requires picking winning stocks, timing the market perfectly, or having insider knowledge that gives them an edge over professional investors. This creates analysis paralysis, where you spend months researching individual companies, trying to predict which ones will outperform, while your money sits in savings accounts earning almost nothing. Meanwhile, you're competing against algorithms and professional analysts with resources you can't match. You've probably felt this overwhelm, looking at hundreds of stock options and feeling like you need to become an expert before making any investment decisions. Or maybe you've tried picking individual stocks only to watch your sure thing companies underperform while missing out on gains from companies you never considered. Let me tell you about two merchants who approached their trading completely differently. The single bet trader concentrated all his resources on individual opportunities that seemed most promising. He'd research extensively, make big bets on specific ventures, and sometimes hit big wins. But he also faced devastating losses when his concentrated bets went wrong, and the stress of trying to predict market movements consumed enormous mental energy. The diversified merchant participated in overall economic growth by spreading his investments across many different trades and regions. His approach looked less exciting because he never hit massive individual wins, but he captured steady growth from the entire marketplace while avoiding catastrophic losses from any single bet going bad. Index fund investing works the same way. You're buying small pieces of hundreds or thousands of companies, essentially betting on the overall economy's growth rather than trying to pick winners. Historical data show that broad market index funds have outperformed most actively managed funds over long periods, though past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Here's something practical you can do. Instead of trying to research individual stocks, consider starting with a simple broad market index fund, like one that tracks the S&P 500. Most major brokerages offer these with low fees and minimum investments. The mindset shift you need is understanding that you don't need to beat the market. You just need to participate in it. However, this approach still involves significant risk. Market downturns can eliminate years of gains, and there's no guarantee that historical performance will continue. Index investing reduces some risks, but doesn't eliminate market volatility or the possibility of substantial losses during economic downturns. Principle 5. Regular contribution increases and rebalancing. Most people set up their investment contributions once and never touch them again, thinking that consistency means keeping everything exactly the same forever. You start investing $200 a month in your 20s, and you're still contributing that same amount in your 40s, even though your income has doubled. Meanwhile, inflation has reduced your purchasing power, and you're missing opportunities to accelerate your wealth building during your peak earning years. This set-it-and-forget-it mentality feels responsible because you're being consistent, but it actually limits your compound growth potential. Your financial capacity changes over time, but your investment strategy stays frozen at whatever level you started, regardless of whether you could be doing more. Let me tell you about two craftsmen who approached their tools completely differently. The set-and-forget artisan bought a basic tool set when he started his trade and never upgraded or improved anything. His tools worked fine, and he was consistent about using them, but his capabilities remained limited by that initial investment level throughout his entire career. The systematic maintainer gradually upgraded his tools and refined his processes over time. As his skills improved and his income grew, he'd invest in better equipment that enhanced his productivity. He also maintained and optimized his existing tools to keep them working at peak efficiency. The solution is building automatic improvement into your investment strategy. This means increasing your contribution rates when you get raises, rebalancing your portfolio annually, and taking advantage of increased contribution limits for retirement accounts as they become available. Here's something practical you can implement. Set up automatic annual increases for your retirement contributions. Even 1% per year makes a significant difference over decades. Also, review your portfolio allocation once a year to make sure it still aligns with your goals and timeline. The mindset shift you need is understanding that maintenance and improvement are part of compound growth, not just initial setup. However, this approach assumes your income will grow over time, which isn't guaranteed for everyone. Economic downturns, career changes, or personal circumstances can limit your ability to increase contributions. Don't feel inadequate if you can't systematically increase your investing. Maintaining consistent contributions is still valuable, and individual circumstances vary dramatically based on factors beyond your control. Principle 6. Avoiding emotional market timing decisions. Market downturns create intense psychological pressure to do something with your investments, even when the smartest move is often doing nothing. When your portfolio drops 20 to 30% during a recession, every instinct screams to sell before you lose more money. You watch the news showing red numbers and panicked experts, and staying invested feels like standing in a burning building while someone tells you not to worry. This emotional reaction is completely natural. Your brain is wired to avoid losses, and watching your hard-earned money disappear on paper triggers genuine fight or flight responses. You start thinking, I'll just sell now and buy back in when things settle down, which sounds logical, but usually results in selling low and buying high. Let me tell you about two military commanders facing extended battles. The reactive commander made decisions based on immediate battlefield conditions and enemy movements. When things looked bad, he'd retreat to protect his forces. When opportunities appeared, he'd advance aggressively. His reactions felt appropriate in each moment, but created inconsistent outcomes over time. The strategic planner maintained a long-term perspective despite short-term setbacks. He understood that temporary losses were part of achieving larger objectives, and that emotional reactions during crisis moments usually led to poor decisions. His approach looked reckless during scary periods, but proved effective over multiple campaigns. Market timing research consistently shows that most investors achieve worse returns than the funds they invest in because they buy and sell at emotionally driven moments. However, this doesn't mean markets always recover quickly or that staying invested guarantees profits. Here's a practical approach. If market volatility causes you to lose sleep or constantly check your accounts, you might have more risk exposure than you can psychologically handle. Consider reducing your stock allocation to a level that feels manageable during downturns. The mindset shift you need is understanding that market volatility is the price you pay for long-term growth potential, not a problem to be solved through timing. However, this approach requires genuine risk tolerance and a financial cushion. If you can't afford losses or need the money within a few years, more conservative approaches might be appropriate. Critical reality. Markets can remain down for years, and there's no guarantee that patient investing will always be rewarded. Individual circumstances and risk tolerance should guide decisions more than abstract principles about market timing. Principle 7. Living below means while building wealth. There's enormous social pressure to upgrade your lifestyle every time your income increases, which prevents most people from building substantial wealth despite earning good money. You get a raise and immediately start thinking about a nicer apartment, better car, or fancier restaurants because you feel like you've earned these improvements. Meanwhile, your increased spending consumes the extra income that could have accelerated your wealth building during your peak earning years. This lifestyle inflation feels natural and even responsible. You're rewarding yourself for career progress and enjoying the fruits of your labor. But it creates a cycle where higher earners often have similar savings rates to lower earners because expenses rise to match income, regardless of the actual dollar amounts involved. Let me tell you about two people who handled career success completely differently. The status seeker spent money to signal his growing success through visible lifestyle upgrades. Better neighborhood, luxury car, designer clothes, expensive restaurants. His spending reflected his advancing career. He felt successful and looked the part, but his net worth barely grew, despite substantial income increases. The wealth accumulator lived modestly, while directing the majority of income increases toward investments. He maintained reasonable comfort without dramatic lifestyle changes, allowing compound growth to work on larger contributions. His approach looked less impressive externally, but created genuine financial security over time. The solution is conscious lifestyle management, enjoying reasonable improvements while avoiding automatic spending increases that consume all additional income. This doesn't mean living like a monk, but it does mean being intentional about which lifestyle upgrades actually improve your life versus those driven by social expectations. Here's something you can try when you get your next raise. Before changing any spending patterns, automatically redirect at least 50% of the increase toward investments or savings. Use the remaining portion for modest lifestyle improvements if desired, but protect the majority of income growth for wealth building. The mindset shift you need is understanding that looking wealthy and being wealthy are often opposites. However, this approach requires significant privilege and isn't accessible to people struggling with basic needs. Don't feel inadequate if you can't save large percentages of income. Individual circumstances vary dramatically. Critical balance. Avoid extreme frugality that damages relationships or creates anxiety. The goal is intentional spending that aligns with your values while building financial security, not deprivation that undermines life satisfaction. These 7 principles demonstrate how compound interest can build wealth, but require honest assessment about realistic timelines and individual capacity. Building substantial wealth through compound growth typically takes 20 to 40 plus years of consistent investing and favorable market conditions that aren't guaranteed. Mathematical principles of compound growth are sound, but markets include significant downturns that can reverse years of progress. Individual results depend heavily on income level, market timing, and economic circumstances beyond personal control. The key insight isn't that everyone will become wealthy through compound interest. It's that consistent investing over decades can create meaningful financial security for those with the capacity to implement it. However, many Americans face constraints, including student debt, healthcare costs, and family obligations that limit investment ability. Focus on sustainable habits that align with your actual circumstances, rather than chasing unrealistic wealth timelines that could lead to disappointment or risky financial decisions. What's your realistic approach to long-term investing, given your current situation? Share your sustainable strategy below, and subscribe for more honest financial education that prioritizes both wealth building and individual well-being.